time to talk techie stuff with our good friend Mathew Dickerson. How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. I like the introduction, the techie stuff.
Techie stuff. That's coffee speak. Now, you've been spending a lot of time overnight looking at the Apple launch. What did they do?
Well, they have their normal September event. They actually delayed it last year, but normally for about the last 8 years, they've had their major launch event. And unfortunately, it's obviously designed to be in American time when it's convenient to Americans. So 3 a.m. this morning, I was up for you and your listeners just to make sure I was there with all the latest information. 5 new products that were announced, or updated products, if you like, were announced. The iPhone 13, and I actually didn't think they'd call it a 13. I thought they might call it a 12S or maybe even jump 13 to 14. A lot of people in China obviously buy these phones, and they're very superstitious in China, so I thought they might have skipped the 13, but no, they've dived straight into 13. So you've got the iPhone 13 and 13 mini, the iPhone 13 Pro and the Pro Max, so that's kind of 2 separate ranges there. Then you've got a new iPad, a new iPad mini, and a new Apple Watch. All of those were announced overnight, and with all the glitz and glamour that you expect from Apple, except there's no one in the studio or no one in the audience watching all this go on. It's all a virtual event, of course.
So what's new about this iPhone 13?
So there's a few different changes there, and it's really tough at the moment. You're really looking for that killer feature, something that comes out that people go, wow, I've got to have that particular phone. Last year, it was 5G being introduced to the phone. So that was one there that was a killer feature, if you like. This year, it was pretty tough for them to come up with a killer feature, and I think phones now are really focused around photography and video, and I suppose that's where the changes are all happening, and that's exactly where the changes are happening with this one. It was all about how can the video be better, how can the photos be better. So with videos, for example, they've introduced a new mode called cinematic mode, and of course, being Apple, they just grabbed a dual Oscar winner to come along and say, can you show us how this cinematic mode might work? And effectively, when you're watching a film where you're seeing some movement of the camera around at different spots in the room, and you'll see the focus go from one person in the front and then move across to someone in the back of the room, and the focus will go to them. And it's called rack focus. And I've never heard that term before, to be honest, but rack focus is a big thing that cinematographers use. That's something that you can't do with a phone because it just hasn't got that depth of field until the iPhone 13. The iPhone 13's got enough computing power and enough cameras on it that it can actually do this rack focus process automatically. And so they showed a 3 or 4 minute film clip with these Oscar winners actually using an iPhone 13 to film something. You can imagine they're used to having pieces of equipment there, their camera equipment worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So going down to a little smartphone seemed like a fairly big downgrade, but what they did was pretty impressive. And supposedly you and I can do that now with our basic skills and just picking up an iPhone 13 and away they go. So that was certainly a big change.
Yeah, I've been watching a TV program, and they've been saying that people are actually now making not just videos and sending them on their phone. They are actually making films with the video part of their telephone. Yeah,
that's right. There have been some, or lots of them actually, films that have been made where they say that this film was made exclusively on a Samsung phone or an Apple phone. Sometimes they're showing off the features of those phones. Sometimes it's just convenient for them, and it's also pretty cost effective. And typically my experience, Rod, is that if you're using a smartphone outside or where there's good lighting, they work pretty well. It's where you've got low lighting, and that's the real challenge for a smartphone. And so one of the things Apple did this time is they increased the sensor and the aperture of the actual new phones so that they can get better photography and better nighttime photography and videos as well, because you've got a bigger sensor, more light can come in. So that's another area that I saw a big change there watching it overnight, was just the night mode photography and the ability to use it in those low lighting situations. And you look at what it's looking like normally and then what it comes through the camera, and it's quite impressive.
And what about going to the iPhone 13 mini?
So the Mini and the 13 are very similar in the features, and basically all the same specs between those two are similar. The Pro phones, essentially what you get when you go to the Pro phone is a third camera on there, which gives you 2x zoom, and you've also got some other little things there. ProRes. Now, this is Apple doing what Apple does. They come up with a sexy name for something and then make everyone start using it, and I'm doing it already. ProRes is a higher spec feature for videos than Dolby Vision. Most phones around the world, and in fact most cameras around the world that are taking high-level videos are using Dolby Vision. Apple say, we can go one better than that, and we'll go ProRes. So it's a higher level video, and again, if you're trying to shoot a film or do something at a high level, that's what you want to use. The other thing with the Pro phone is they've gone to the ProMotion, which again is an Apple term. It just basically means you've got a higher refresh rate. So 120 hertz refresh rate for the screen itself. So that just means you've got less blur on the screen. In the Mini, using the same Mini term, the iPad Mini was probably the biggest change of all the products that they had in this particular launch. The iPad Mini was something that was talked about, a new version coming out. Now, the iPad Mini's been around for a long time, but they don't seem to update it very often. There was an iPad Mini Gen 4 that came out in 2015. Then it was all the way till 2019 till the Gen 5 came out. And it's been 2.5 years now till the Gen 6 came out. But what they've done with the iPad Mini is a complete redesign. They've basically kept the physical size of it smaller, but increased the screen size from 7.9 inches out to 8.3 inches. So it's one of those magic TARDIS things where physically it gets smaller, but the screen size gets larger. They do that by reducing the size of the bezel around the outside. So when you look at the iPad Mini now, the specs are quite impressive. It's now got 5G, that bigger screen, as I mentioned, the cameras on that. Not that you buy an iPad for its cameras, but the cameras on the back and the front are both 12 megapixel cameras. And the fact that we're doing more video calls, Rod, they've introduced a feature called Center Stage. Now, it was previously only available on the iPad Pro, but now available on the iPad Mini as well, where you essentially set up the iPad to do a video call, and it sits there in one location. It's still. But if you move around in the screen itself, you actually have the camera effectively follow you. Now, it doesn't really follow you. It's just using a wider screenshot and then focuses in on a smaller part. So it looks like the camera follows you around as you're moving in screen. It looks very clever. I've used it myself on my iPad Pro. To have it now on the Mini and the standard iPad is quite impressive.
All right, and very quickly, tell us about these smart glasses that have been getting a bit of coverage lately.
Yeah, it's something that Google tried way back in 2014. They came out with smart glasses, and it got to the point where it was a bit of a dud, and people were trying to use them, and kind of people were a bit concerned about their privacy. There was, in fact, one bar in particular, I remember, that had a sign up that said basically, no glass holes coming into our bar, please. So they banned anyone with the glasses on, and they just called them glass holes as a reference to those people. So it's surprising that Facebook have done the same thing. What they've got is a set of glasses that's got two cameras built into them, three microphones, two speakers, and effectively you can be sitting there, you and I could be at the pub or at a coffee shop or just walking down the street, and I suddenly start filming you. You're not really aware that you're being filmed or photographed. There is a little flashing LED light on them, but you're not really looking at that when you're just chatting away to someone. Next thing you know, that conversation that we've had is being posted on social media. The idea is, in theory, that it can make it really easy for you to capture things that are going on in your life. You can really be connected to your followers because you're capturing all this information. But the privacy issues are where Google Glasses fell down, and I think this is where Facebook Glasses are going to fall down as well. And let's face it, Facebook hasn't got a great reputation in terms of protecting people's data.
No. Mathew Dickerson, thanks so much for talking with us today.
My pleasure.